Welcome in, everybody, to the CFB Nation All-America podcast. I'm Bill Trocchi, senior editor at sportingnews.com, alongside Bill Bender, our national college football writer at sportingnews.com, and the president of the Football Writers Association of America. Welcome into our second live show of the summer. We are doing these on Wednesday mornings. People are allowed to come in, watch us at youtube.com at the College Football CFB Nation channel, and you can subscribe there. You can leave comments during the show. And so we are up and running again. We did it last week. We're doing it this week. We're going to try to keep doing it every Wednesday morning during the off season. Bill, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I know another week closer to the media days, but a lot of talk about the college football playoff, we're going to talk about some rivalries today, and it'll be a good time.
Yeah, so we are going to get into you did a great idea, and then we talked about it a little bit. You dove in to the top 25 hottest college football rivalries, not right now, as of 2025. We put that together. We're going to publish it tomorrow on Thursday, but because we have these special listeners who are joining us live, they are going to get a sneak peek at the list and see what we think about where all these rivalries stand and don't stand. Some have fallen out, of course. Oklahoma State has died. Unfortunately, that was always a staple, as you said in your story. So let's kick it off first, though, with a little Trocchi trivia. No surprise, the number one rivalry on our list is Michigan-Ohio State. That's without a doubt, but we will talk about that one. So I have a Michigan-Ohio State Trocchi trivia question for you, Bill. Mm-hmm. And I know you are like a high-level expert in this rivalry. So this is a high-level question, but I have faith in you, okay? Mm-hmm. Are you ready for me to test your Michigan-Ohio State knowledge? When is the only time in the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry where the road team won 4 straight games? Can you name that little 4-year stretch? The road team, it's the only time, and it wasn't in like the 20s or 30s or something like that. The only time the road team won 4 straight. See if you can pull that out of the hat. We'll revisit that at the end of the show. So, before we get on the rivalries, do you want to talk a little SEC, Big Ten, what's happening with the college football playoff? The leaders are meeting in Asheville, North Carolina this week, today, right now, actually. And this is their 4th meeting since the end of last season, in-person meeting. I wish we had that kind of travel budget that the CFP committee has to determine whether they're going to have 12 teams, 16 teams, or whatever. So what do you think? It appears the SEC is kind of broken ranks a little bit with the Big Ten, and they're almost wiping the chalkboard clean this week.
Yeah, it sounds like, we're still arguing about automatic qualifiers, mm-hmm. and how many the SEC wants, how many the Big Ten wants, those type of things, and it's just going to lead to more confusion. I think that there'll be a little bit of a blame game here. That Ryan Day's comments about the Big Ten putting 4 teams in the college football playoff automatically stirred some feathers, or ruffled some feathers, whatever you want to say. And the SEC seems to want a different format. So based on the strength of scheduling, which, we talked about this last week with the strength of schedule things that we did. It's hard. Like my view of strength of schedule may be very different than yours. And that's probably what we're dealing with there. So I don't know if we'll get anything about this. And the more I think about it, we're probably heading toward, they'll just stick with 12 for another year or two at this rate. If they can't come up with a plan for 16, they'll end up sticking with 12.
Right, which would be my preference. We talked about that, and you were surprised to hear that. You just want to jump to 16 and just lock it in for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, because if I had my preference, we would just go back to 2 or 4. We already, there was a great line by Ivan Mizell on one of them CFB 150 shows that ESPN did a few years ago. The second we go to 8, they're going to want 9. The second we go to 16, they're going to want 17. And I just, you've already watered down the regular season, in my opinion, but they sort of, November was fun, but you definitely watered down the meaning of a champion to me anyway. So but I sound like a hypocrite because we might as well just go to 16 instead of going to 14. 12 is weird. I still think the format's a little weird. 16, you play 4 games. I'm sticking with that same format that I've wanted for a while, and we'll see if they actually go to it. But I think there is a want to go to 16. It's just the how we get there is complicated as usual.
It's paralysis by analysis right now. They're trying to explore every option so they can defend themselves when they get criticized, this and that and the other thing. When, I don't know. I it's funny. The first 12 team was universally accepted when it first came out. It was like, oh yeah, the conference champions and 12 team, whatever. And then it has kind of devolved and now I don't know what they're going to get. So let's get into one. So the number one rivalry, like we mentioned, Michigan, Ohio State, clearly. One piece of Michigan news before we get into the rivalries. Jake Garcia transferring to Michigan from East Carolina via Missouri, via Miami, via committed to Georgia out of high school, moved from California to Georgia, well-traveled. Why are they doing this? Why did they sign Jake Garcia?
I mean, who knows? There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there that like Bryce Underwood's going to transfer and those kind of things. Maybe just added depth. Ohio State signed an FBS quarterback, another transfer quarterback. Nobody seems to care about that. So, I mean, it'll be interesting. I think Bryce Underwood's not going anywhere. People are trying to this is where people are trying to connect the dots to Michigan's going to get super punished. Bryce Underwood's going to transfer to LSU. Well, okay. I don't know. Maybe they're just adding depth in the room. So
it's just weird. If you're Bryce Underwood, you're kind of annoyed that they signed him, aren't you?
Not if you're a competitor. I mean, that to me, it's like, yeah, you could be like, okay, why is that guy coming in? Or, how many? I mean,
he shouldn't feel threatened. The guy lost his job at East Carolina last year.
Right. So I'm like,
how good is he?
If you're bringing in added depth, but if you're a competitor and especially a 5-star one, you're looking to, hammer down that starting job. I mean, Bryce Underwood is ranked in our top 25 quarterbacks at Sporting News, and we rarely put freshman starters in there. The 5-star starting freshman is still, it's probably something we need to dig into more. Like I'm going to stick with, I think it's going to be a little bit about like Dylan Raiola was last year at Nebraska. He's certainly talented. There's going to be some amazing flashes of that brilliance, and there's going to be some interceptions and some, why did he do that? And at the end of the day, I think by the end of the year, you'll see in the second half of the season, you'll start to see who Bryce Underwood is. But who's he throwing to? It doesn't matter which one of these quarterbacks. They don't have – that's the question mark for the Wolverines, the receivers. So, we'll see how he grows into that role.
All right. Let's get into the college football's top 25 hottest rivalries. And needless to say, you started with Michigan, Ohio State. Have you been to all 4 of the wins for Michigan the last 4 years? Is that right?
I've covered every Michigan Ohio State game since 2015. So since Jim Harbaugh arrived, basically. So I got a pretty good handle on at least the Harbaugh Meyer to Harbaugh Day to now Day Sharon era of this rivalry.
So that's 11 years you did, or 10, or
I think I've covered
10.
10.
So yeah, Ohio State 5-4. They didn't play in 2020, of course. Ranked matchup since 2015, 7. What is your biggest memory from this 10-year stretch of Ohio State dominating and then Michigan switching it around and having this unlikely 4-game winning streak?
Probably that, the 16 game, between
still the 16 game.
That's still the best game that I've covered between the two. just the impact of the spot and
the spot, the change, pull those chains, baby.
The fallout afterward, and going to the Michigan side of that, and Harbaugh was losing it, and you could see, I like the phrase I always use, like he couldn't calculate how angry he was about that spot because he knew the impact of that game because he never beat Urban Meyer, and the intensity of that game, just seeing it go into overtime, which, it had happened before, but not like that. And then kind of Michigan spun their wheels for the next 3 years. And then the second best would be 2 years ago in Ann Arbor, off the heels of all the Connor Stallion stuff, the energy, because you kind of knew that was the last. Well, Harbaugh wasn't even there, but you knew he was leaving, and Michigan was able to beat them in a very intense game, cover to cover. I think you go into this game most years thinking Ohio State's going to win, but Michigan, because they've won 4 in a row, they've flipped it. I'm said it, and I know I'm from Ohio and I get it, but there's not another rivalry that touches this one. There's just not. Not from a national interest, not from a national magnitude, not from a rating standpoint, not from the passion on both sides, the players in it, the stakes and the fallout. There's just not. I mean, I've had this argument about Alabama, Auburn, or Texas, Oklahoma. There may be more hate in other rivalries. I would concede that, but the product, there's not a better product than Michigan, Ohio State in college football as far as a one game thing. And, I'll stick to that probably for the rest of my life.
And the two things last year was clearly Ohio State was way better than Michigan, and it got in their head and they lost the game. Then they have the post-game fracas. Like those two things were linked, and just turns up the heat on something that's got so much tradition and so long that it's just like, yeah, it's off the charts right now. This is like Red Sox, Yankees in 03, 04, 02, 03, 04, like back when they had superstars and they were challenging for the playoffs and the World Series and all that stuff. And it was, it couldn't get any hotter. And now I think this one can't get any hotter, especially with the upset from last year, even though it didn't take Ohio State out of the national championship game. But boy, what a rough couple of weeks it was leading into the playoffs for Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean that, and when there's upsets, it amplifies it. And this is probably the last 10 years is probably the closest thing we've had to the 10-year war between Woody and Bo that amplified this thing in the first place and took it to the national stage where it was very real. So we'll see where it goes from here. I think Ohio State is in a spot where they're competing for national championships every year. Michigan, I don't know. This rivalry is not immune to lulls. I mean, the trivia question you asked, I think, is one of those lulls. Like Ohio State dominated this rivalry through the Tressel and Meyer years, and I'm pretty sure I think Ohio State won 7-8 in a row there. So they have dominated this rivalry more in the 21st century, but that's why it's been amped up the last 4 years, because Michigan did finally turn the tables on that. And how they did it, we can debate all you want, but it is definitely it hasn't lost any steam, certainly. And there's other rivalries that I enjoy a lot, but just being around this one as long as I have, I don't think there's a comparison.
Okay, jumping through the list here now. Texas, Oklahoma was number 2. Auburn, Alabama, number 3. Army, Navy, number 4. Alabama, LSU, 5. And USC, Notre Dame, 6, which may not be on the list soon, since they are discussing about potentially ending that series, unfortunately, for everybody. So you and I had a discussion about Alabama, LSU. We bumped them up a little bit after looking at it, talking about it. Want to talk a little bit about that one. You've got some stats here. Alabama 8-2 in the last 10, but 8 of the 10 matchups, both teams have been ranked. They've won several national championships. They had that legendary game in 2019. It had NFL players all over the place, and they are both preseason top 10 teams this year. So I don't know that it's the heat's coming down. It may, obviously, with Nick Saban gone, that cranked the rivalry up, no doubt about it, since he won national championships at both schools. But what are your thoughts when you hear Alabama LSU and the challenge that Kalen DeBoer and Brian Kelly have right now?
Well, it's a better game than any other game, and it's been the best game of the 21st century. It's 8 so Ohio State, Michigan, 7 ranked matchups the last 10 years, and they didn't play the COVID year, which if we're being real, Ohio State would have picked their score in that one. Mm-hmm. So that rivalry would be 5-5 the last 10 years at that point. LSU, Alabama, 8 ranked matchups. They played in the best game of the 21st century with all those NFL guys that played in 2019. I just wonder if it'll dwindle a little bit. And that's kind of I think it will. I think it's going to fade a little bit. It may not be played every year with the future of the SEC scheduling. I don't know that Alabama fans look at LSU as the got-to-have-it game over Auburn, or in a couple years, maybe Tennessee, because that one's heating up a little bit. Tennessee winning 2 of the last 3 there. But as far as the last 10 years go, yeah, it's you could make a case it's number 1, and I would hear it. Because of the magnitude of all those games that they've had. But that said, last year, it's like Alabama walked in there and won by 30 points at Death Valley. And I think both programs, it doesn't feel quite like it did with Les and Nick Saban on the sidelines. Those were top 5 games every year.
Every year, right.
So it has dwindled a little bit, but we'll see. I mean, they're like you said, they're both in the top 10. They're both boomer bust teams this year, and I think it'll continue to be a good rivalry.
Yeah. So yeah, you make a good point with Saban taken out of the mix. The next 5 years, the heat may go down a little bit on that one. USC Notre Dame. We talked about this rivalry with Matt Fortuna a month ago or something like that, and I asked him about why the fact that this rivalry might be ending is hitting a little different. It seems like a lot of people are kind of upset that this one might be going away. Not just USC and Notre Dame fans, who obviously want to keep the rivalry going, especially Notre Dame fans. I think USC may be a little more lukewarm on it. USC seems to be the one that isn't eager to renew it beyond next year. Why do you think this one hits for people maybe more nationally than just the 2 specific fan bases?
I mean, it's fun. There's a lot of this is probably one of the most historical rivalries on the list, and that's when we did this list, I made it clear, this is like last 10 years. And right. Historically speaking, Notre Dame's kind of taking control of that rivalry. Lincoln Riley and Marcus Freeman could carry this into a really special place if they continue to play, because, well, if Lincoln Riley gets it going at USC. The games are always fun. I do like the cross-country element of it. They play in the Coliseum one year. They play in South Bend the other. It's always been a fun game. Does have, if that LSU-Alabama game isn't the best game of the 21st century, that one has been in the last 10 years, then it would be the Bush Push game. If I was making a list of the 25 best games, that would probably be 1 or 2. So, yeah, it's just the uncertainty of what might happen in the future if USC doesn't renew, which, as Brian Driscoll, who's not here, but I know he's watching or listening, knows that we had a very animated discussion about that. And the fact that my viewpoint exists tells me that it's still a little bit endangered, but the passion that Notre Dame fans have for it, and I'm assuming USC fans do too, kind of tells me that hopefully eventually they come to an agreement. I just think it's going to be, if I were me, just put it at the beginning of the schedule. They might not like it, but that's like the compromise, that you at least get to play that game. Just play it in week 1. It'd be great. It
would be. It would be fun. If that's the season opener every year, I mean, it's hard to picture because week 1 often has a lot of great games, so it might get swallowed up a little bit. There's something about the atmosphere with the late October or mid-October in South Bend is always cool. And then it was the Thanksgiving weekend out in Los Angeles every weekend. So I think, college football fans have been asked to adjust and get ready for new traditions in many, many areas. That might be one also that USC and Notre Dame fans might have to get used to as well. So let's keep going down the list. So that was 6. 7 was Alabama, Tennessee. 8, welcome back, Texas A&M. 9, BYU, Utah in the Big 12 now. And 10, Clemson, South Carolina. Those last two really have had some hot games. We're talking about heated rivalries, hot games the last two couple years, especially BYU last year with the controversial late call against Utah that allowed BYU to keep their winning drive alive. And Utah's athletic director immediately came into the press conference room and complained about the call, which is unusual to say the least. And then, of course, South Carolina has beaten Clemson on the road 2 years, the last 2 times, 2 out of the last 3, both times at Clemson. They pulled the upset. So, yeah, those two are really heating up in your mind.
Yeah, and Florida Georgia fans will get mad and say, why isn't that in the top 10?
They're at 11, right.
They're top 5. Why is that not top 10, top 5? One of the themes of this list is Kirby's a little bit of a rivalry killer. He's just killing Florida. He's killing Georgia Tech. He's killing Auburn. They've won 10 out of the last 11. So Georgia, Florida,
Tennessee used to be a hot one too, and that one's not hot anymore.
It's like, yeah, dude, like Georgia's just beating these teams. And which game would you rather watch right now? Georgia, Florida, which they did have a nice run there for a 3-year stretch, but the last 4, they've been close. Or Clemson, South Carolina, or BYU, Utah, which I would watch over both of them, because that game, you could argue, has the most kind of passion and hatred. There's a religious bent to that game. It is, like, we don't have to get really into it, but I mean,
the Holy War, man.
It's called the Holy War for a reason. They do not like each other, and like you said, the AD was in that press conference pretty quick, and that game had so much passion. And I think what that lacks, though, is it needs a couple. I could imagine a scenario where they play for a Big 12 championship where it'd be like, okay, this is going through the roof. So, yeah, I'll probably get some hate mail from Florida, Georgia, which when we did our CFB 150 list, we had them. It's like a top 5, top 6 historical rivalry. Is it a top 10 rivalry right now? I mean, I would ask SEC fans if you could watch. Another thing I'll say here, Bill, about that top 10 is if I had to pick one SEC game the last 3 years that sticks in my memory more than any other game, it's probably that Tennessee-Alabama game a couple years ago, where Tennessee finally broke the streak and won 52-49, and all the bedlam that came after that. So, those SEC rivalries fluctuate in intensity. 25 years ago was Tennessee-Florida. Georgia-Alabama isn't, technically a rivalry. It's the biggest game. And LSU, as our we have a comment in the comment section from NH, like, yeah, LSU-Alabama, some people might not see that as a rivalry, but I think it's kind of like Penn State, Ohio State to me. That's not on the list. It probably should be, but it's not technically a rivalry. Plus, Penn State hasn't won that game in about a decade.
Penn State didn't make the list at all. I thought
they don't have a protected rival.
Yeah,
so their fans definitely can't complain about this one. They're the ones that run around and say Pitt's not their rival, or they don't have a Big Ten rival. So, but I considered putting Penn State, Ohio State on here because you could make a case that over the last 15 years that it's been a more compelling game than Ohio State and Michigan in some ways.
It is. It is must see every year, but Ohio State seems to win every year.
And they're not playing it every year now. So
yeah,
there you go. Oregon State's another one I wanted to mention because probably should be higher on the list, but it's about to be discontinued. So, I mean, that's one of the things about realignment. If we were making this list 3 years ago, Oklahoma State would be like top 10, no longer being played. And that's one of the crappy things about realignment. And, one of the reasons I don't want to see USC Notre Dame end, but if it takes a compromise scheduling wise to keep it going, that would alter the tradition a little bit, but at least we'd still have it.
They need to do that. Yeah. They need to alter it if they want to. If it's a choice of altering it versus discontinuing, they definitely.
Well, let me ask you, SEC guy, what SEC rivalry are you like? I can't miss this one.
Well, I mean, the Ole Miss Mississippi State Egg Bowl has a history of, that's number 13 on the list. That one and the Clemson South Carolina, both have an underrated element of hate. They've got that hate level that like Michigan State have, where it's not like top 10 versus top 10 type of game, but there is like the rivalry between the schools is so heated. And so I would say those two compare favorably to what you always talk about, Michigan State. There's more hate in that game than Ohio State between those two schools.
Right. Yeah. And it's because of the in-state factor. Those in-state rivalries, I would compare Michigan State's a lot like Ole Miss, Mississippi State. It's a lot like
Clemson,
South Carolina, which from my time living in Charlotte, I lived in Charlotte for 7 years, right on the border of South Carolina. When you went down there, the weirdest thing about the Clemson, South Carolina rivalry to me was they were neighbors. Like, and it's kind of like, you would have an in-state rivalry, one house orange, one house, and it was always nice people. But when you brought up Clemson, South Carolina, it got really personal real quick. and it was different. Whereas like Michigan State, you go to a tailgate there and they're hanging around with each other. That, we have, I've friends that went to Michigan State. I have friends that root for Michigan. And they get along, but I mean, when when they're on the field, it's nasty between the players. It's nasty. And hopefully the incidents that I think they've actually made that rivalry worse, not better. Some of the stuff that's gone on in the tunnel and some of the fights that we've had, there's a point where it makes the rivalry worse and not better. And I think that we've reached that point with Michigan State.
Florida State's another one. I think I told you the story when we went down. My Vanderbilt friends went down to a Vanderbilt Florida game. We were talking to a bunch of Gator fans after the game and during the game, whatever, and asking them, who is your biggest rival? Because Florida Tennessee was, testy for a while, and Florida Georgia, of course, and Florida State, and universally Florida State was named the number one rival. Florida State was the team that they were going to go 1-11. They wanted to beat Florida State without a doubt. And so that we've got them ranked 12th on this. I think that's a good spot. So Ole Miss, Mississippi State 13, like I said. Florida Tennessee is 14. Michigan State 15. We mentioned that one. Here's an old-fashioned SEC one, Auburn, Georgia. That one, both teams, it's second banana a little bit because Georgia's got other bigger fish to fry with Florida. I think you would probably rank Florida among Georgia fans. Florida is the biggest rival, but they also have one with Tennessee. They also have one with Georgia Tech. They also have one with Auburn. Auburn falls in there. They've had some really good games over the last 11 years. 6 ranked matchups you have since 2015. That's one of the highest on this list. But like you said, Kirby's killing it by winning 8 straight. So
they haven't beat I remember, I think I was at Miami Notre Dame when Auburn beat Georgia, and this was like a decade ago, and then they haven't beat them since. So yeah, like Georgia fans, you send the hate mail my way, but your coach is killing everybody, and they got to lose a few before we consider them rivalries again. And I didn't feel as bad about that one. I believe the next one on the list is Miami Florida State, right?
Yes.
So that's the one I want to talk about because I mean, if we're making this list in 1995 and I'm sitting in the living room with my high school buddies, that's number 1.
Yes.
And it's just the fact that they've only had one ranked matchup the last 10 years is just, and I put it this way. I think it was 2 seasons ago. We were having one of our typical college football Saturdays, flipping through channels and watching games. And I came across it and I forgot it was on. That's how it's fallen. And that's my point. Like rivalries can fall off, and none has fallen off more of our national consciousness than Miami and Florida State.
The one thing they've got going for them is it's 5-5 the last 10 years, at least. So they've got that, but you're right. That was the rivalry in the 90s. It was incredible. So you've got Kentucky, Louisville at 18, USC, UCLA 19, Washington State 20. I'm worried about this one, obviously, because Washington State's no longer a Power
They're
4.
on the schedule for the foreseeable future, though. So they
I
still
know,
are.
but it's not going to be competitive, is it?
It's not going to be the same. But I think Washington State kind of fired a warning shot last year. It's like, you can go to the Big Ten, but we can still beat you. And it's got a cool name. They've had some cool matchups.
It's got a cool name. It does have a cool name.
Apple Cup. Yeah, like it's good. It normally an end of season tradition that they had to alter, though, right? They moved that one up to the earlier in the season. Now, what was the one before that?
USC, UCLA.
What was the one before that one? What was 18?
Kentucky, Louisville.
That's the one I wanted to talk about. That should be higher, and I should have. But hatred wise, it's high. They've had like fights on the field.
Yes,
they don't like each other. It's kind of spilled over from basketball a little bit. More competitive game. Louisville, they've gone back and forth a little bit.
Louisville fans get a little surly.
I think it's got a Michigan State feel to it. They just need to have better. They need to have a couple top 25 matchups.
Yeah, that hasn't happened. Yeah, you've got for the last 10 years there. So finishing off the list, Wisconsin, Minnesota at 21, Iowa State 22, Georgia Tech 23. Again, one of those Kirby games where they have fun games, but Kirby keeps winning all of them. 24 is Oregon State, and 25 Iowa, Minnesota. You like that one over Iowa, Nebraska? Did you have a little debate on that one? You're muted. That's all right.
Yeah, Iowa, Nebraska, Iowa. Those Iowa rivalries, they're all about the same. But Iowa has dominated Minnesota. Iowa has dominated Nebraska, and Iowa State's been pretty close. When you talk about those Big Ten trophies, Wisconsin, Minnesota is another one that's kind of evened out a little bit. Wisconsin owned that one, so PJ Fleck is winning that game a little bit. We'll see if he can try to win that a little bit more. But I don't know. All of those are interchangeable. Those are part of that Big Ten West games that they have cool trophies. They have cool games. They're close games. Sometimes they're ugly. But I think we stack those ones up properly.
Is Penn State the best team that's not on any of these lists?
Correct. Because you want to put Penn State Pitt on here. Penn State and Pitt should. If Penn State and Pitt played every year, judging by the intensity of the couple games that they played a couple years ago, and Pat Narduzzi and James Franklin sniping back and forth, it would probably be top 10 easily, in my opinion. So that's one that they should play. Penn State, Ohio State, like I said, it's up there. It's a fun game, but it's kind of like Ohio State's secondary rival, but they're not going to play every year. So it's hard to say that this game is gaining heat when after this year, they're not going to play for a few years.
And the only Big 12 team or game on the list is BYU, Utah, which aren't traditional Big 12 teams. So got a little sympathy for the Big 12 in terms of realignment and what it has left this conference when, BYU, Utah is the only real rivalry that we're talking about. I mean, Kansas State, okay, Iowa State, Kansas State, Farmageddon, they're going to Ireland to open the season. That'll be fun. That'll give it a shot in the arm or whatever. But yeah, not too much to speak of in the Big 12.
Well, they all left. So what do we do with, Colorado, BYU could become a rivalry. I mean, you've got to make some here. Arizona State could escalate in importance. I understand that, but there's not a Colorado, Nebraska, or an Oklahoma, Texas was the rivalry that carried the Big 12, and now it's technically the SEC's highest ranked rivalry according to our list, which is wild. But you bring up a good point. You can't just make them up. So I think hopefully some of them, like Kansas State. Kansas hasn't beat Kansas State forever. So Utah, BYU, which they took a hiatus, could theoretically be the Big 12's rivalry that defines the conference. Farmageddon's fun, but I don't think we view it nationally like, oh my gosh, I have to see this rivalry. And I do think the other one, if there's a closing thought I would have is, I'm just, if I rank this, it would be totally subjective, but if I rank this, who hates who the most, we're just ranking them on and they hate each other the most. I think Texas A&M would be one.
Whoa.
I think they hate each other more than any two fan bases in the country. And I get that. I don't know how you would measure that or quantify it. They hated each other when they weren't playing. And Texas doesn't
maybe even more.
Yeah, and now they're playing, and that game in Austin this year where Texas A&M hasn't won since like 2003. They could pull that spoiler; it would be huge.
Yep. And one I thought about, North Carolina State. I don't know if you looked at that one. They had a fight last year, of course, a flag planting thing, of probably the third flag planting fight that we had on that one Saturday. That Michigan, Ohio State kicked it off, and North Carolina State. I think Arizona State had a spear planting problem out in Arizona for the rivalry game, and they had a big fight after that. That was the spate of rivalry fights we had. But at North Carolina State, so I looked it up, and I think it's last 10 years, NC State has won 7 maybe, but 5 of them have been by less than a touchdown. Right. And so every close game has gone NC State's way, and that rubs the Tar Heels the wrong way.
Oh, for sure. But, I mean, in Doran and Mac Brown, there was no love lost there either. So Belichick, what will he add to this rivalry? Maybe it heats up a little bit, but I feel like those, at the end of the day, those two schools, much like Kentucky and Louisville, they'd rather watch the basketball game. and that makes it hard to like, and I'm not saying the football games aren't good, but they're right on the fringe of a top 25 rivalry. Another one that we left off that, simply hasn't been competitive is Virginia Tech. Mm-hmm. So like you need to win a few. So I don't think we left anybody out. And I'm glad you pointed out NC State, which would be on that fringe, but I think we covered it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's going to be published tomorrow, Thursday, for people who are listening to the recording, and people who have watched the live show have a little bit of a head start, but it'll be at sportingnews.com tomorrow. Bill will tweet it out. I'll tweet it out, and we will share it on the Instagrams and the socials and all that kind of stuff. So, all right, let's get back to the number one rivalry, Michigan, Ohio State. My trivia question for the week, when is the only time in the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry where the road team won 4 straight games?
Well, I thought Michigan got Ohio State 4 times in the 80s, but I thought it through, or 90s, but I thought it through. I think they tied one year. So I think that broke that streak. But I do know, and I've covered 3 of these, Michigan beat Ohio State in 11 and 21 at home at the Big House. They lost the 4 in between. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So 13, Michigan went for 2. Devin Gardner, they'd lose by 1. 15 was the Urban Jim Harbaugh first game.
I mean consecutive years.
Where the road team won all 4 years.
Correct.
Oh, I have no idea. I'm trying now. I'd have to rethink. I thought you meant the
I
road
guess I
team.
didn't phrase it right. The road team won 4 consecutive games. Not
that like Ohio State won,
yes.
Michigan won, Ohio State won, Michigan won.
Yes.
I
bet you can't see. Come on now, Bill. Your history.
I'm gonna have to.
So the road team. So Ohio State won in Ann Arbor, and then Michigan won in Columbus, and then next year Ohio State won in Ann Arbor, and then the next year,
right? Probably in the 80s. I mean, I'm guessing there was a stretch in the 80s between. So let me try. I'll probably miss this, but like 84 to 87, something like that.
78 to 81.
Okay.
78 to 81. So, and they were all like, highly ranked games back then, whatever.
Right.
So 78, number 6, Michigan went into Columbus, won 14 to 3. 79, number 2, Ohio State beat number 13, Michigan, 18 to 15 in Ann Arbor. In 80, Michigan at number 10 beat number 5, Ohio State, 9 to 3.
I don't remember that game. I was 1 year old, so I don't, So, and then 81,
it was Ohio State 14, Michigan 9 in Ann Arbor.
But yeah, so like in my defense, though, I wanted to finish. Ohio State won at Michigan 4 straight times. That's how I read the question.
Okay.
So it was like 2013, 15, 17, 19.
Yep.
And I'm going to go back and look to see if a team has, like, they won 4 straight at Michigan. So I wonder how many times the team has won. That might be the longest streak, honestly, where they won 4 in a row. 19 being the last time Ohio State beat Michigan right before COVID.
I know. So it's been a while since fans have been able to go to the shoe and celebrate a win over Michigan. That's a rough stretch for the Buckeyes. Right. So anyway, all right. Well, that was fun. That's a good story. I had a really fun time picking out photos for all 25 of those rivalries, and so it's going to look really cool when we publish it tomorrow. And so thanks to people for joining us on our YouTube channel. We'll see you next Wednesday morning. For everyone else, thanks for listening to the CFB Nation All-America podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you to Irish Breakdown, your source for Notre Dame football information. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you soon.